you do kind of tuck OpTic nicely in with that top 4.
We gotta wait until the major to really make moves.
Your confidence is at an all-time high.
Welcome to Reverse Sweeps Power Rankings presented by USAA Insurance. We're getting to that stretch of the year where it's starting to get real tough with these power rankings because you guys, Pacman, does it just feel like we kind of already know what we know?
Yeah, I mean, that's normally what happens at the end of the season. So everybody is kind of solidified in their spots, and you know, it is what it is. The bottom teams are the bottom team, the top teams are the top teams, and every so often we do get a couple upsets here and there, but it's pretty constant.
Guys, let's take a look at the results. They are tried, they are true. Gorillas in Seattle both got swept on day 1 by teams like Toronto and Minnesota. And well, Florida getting a nice win over Dallas. OpTic getting a huge win over Atlanta FaZe 3-2. And London taking out New York. Those staple moments from the results of the week. And then on top of that, let's look at the group stage, how things are starting to play out. Well, OpTic sitting on top of Group A at 3-0. FaZe right behind them at 3-1. Toronto and Florida at the top of their group, both 3-0. And the most surprising one that's probably catching your eye in these group standings, New York Subliners sitting at 0-3, dead last, the very bottom of Group A, underneath teams like Paris Legion and London Royal Ravens. What is going on with them? We'll see how it affects them in the power rankings, which we are going to reveal to you now, guys. Maybe those bottom 3, not super surprising. So let's start out with Los Angeles Gorillas. Pacman, you moved them back down 1 to 12.
I mean, they've won 2 maps. They've won 2 maps in the stage out of 4 matches. They're just not very good. Their matches aren't even entertaining to watch. They're just... I honestly feel for Mental. He's had the worst debut ever, maybe. And that's not even all his fault. He's got put into a tough spot. But at the same time, he's still not playing well. The team is struggling, and I see them defending themselves a lot at this point, and there's not really much to say. It's like... they're just not good. And it's at the end of the season, and there's very little for them to still fight for other than their potential futures as pro players. I feel like the pride's already gone. They lost 250-15 and stuff like that. That's over with.
It's out the door. It is tough. I do want to say one thing, because I know we kind of make fun of LAG a lot, and while it is deserved in the sense of they are horrible, okay, and they didn't really make any right management moves. It has to be tough for the players. You know that they're not going out there every day and practicing to win 2 maps in 4 series, you know, and they are getting a lot of hate, and sometimes this happens, okay, it just doesn't work, and if moves aren't made, you're kind of stuck in this situation. And then having you know, yeah, we've all been there. I mean, I was there last year on Seattle. But it just isn't a good environment for anyone. Even someone like Mental, who is new, like getting put in that position, it just isn't good. So while they definitely are the worst team in the league, Katie, okay, and they need to make changes going next year, they're trying. You know, they are trying. So I just want to put that out there, because I have seen there's one thing to criticize a team or criticize players, but there's been a lot of toxicity on social media, especially like in the chats. Yeah, you'll be shocked. Yeah. And so you know, it's hard to see, but yeah, they suck. You know, they are the worst.
Yeah, it's kind of double-edged, right? You don't want to talk people. I think people go too far and they talk about people like personally. You know what I mean? These are all nice. These are all pretty good guys. Like, they're all
great guys.
They're all dope. And it's just, as a unit, they're not good. But as people, like, people always go at them too hard. It's not about, it's like, relax. You got to separate Silly from Justin, the person. Like, it's not fair to go at them personally like that. It's just not right.
Well, what is right is that Seattle has been moved down 2 places to number 11. All is right in the world. Ian, Seattle and Gorillas back on the bottom.
It's, yeah, you know, they're right there with their homie LAG. It's tough, and honestly, when it comes to the bottom part of these rankings, it's hard because these teams, they know that they've known for a while, okay, but it was recently set in stone that they can't make champs. So it is very similar to how it is in sports. Like, people tank, obviously there's not a draft, but they're just not trying as hard. That's why I wish all these teams would have challenger teams, academy teams, and bring those players up like as a whole to get reps versus the top teams in the league. Because you think right now, like, yeah, if you ask Octane, Gunless, Classic, Pristini, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, we're trying.
Yeah, of course we are.
Like, yeah, but like, come on. You know the effort isn't the same right now compared to if they were maybe 10 points out of a championship spot or just
impossible.
Yeah, or just in the top 8 right now, like top 6. Like the effort is just not there. So it's
what are the chances there's like team VOD sessions happening unless it's like
no
demanded
chance
by the franchise? There's
no
chance that they sit and watch back a loss.
Seattle's
like, whatever, we lost next.
Seattle is playing the match. Sam's gone to World of Warcraft Classic. I don't know. I will say this though, because I play Cold War League play like late night with Classic and Gunless a lot. Like that, and I'm honestly surprised because like they're my guys, and I would never say this to them. But if they do stumble upon this, I'm sorry. I'm in my head. I'm like, why the? It's like 2 a.m. Why are you guys grinding? Like you're not going to change. Like you guys suck. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. Do something else. But like so, they, you know, they're trying. But
study up on some.
But regardless, yeah, when the effort isn't fully there, it's just hard to watch, and that goes for any team. You know, it's just hard to watch.
Oh, that's all you can say. And a reminder, Reverse Sweep is presented by USAA Insurance. They make it super easy to insure all of your stuff, like your rigs and gear, and they have your back. Eligibility restrictions apply, and insurance provided by United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas. Let's move on to Paris. Pacman, is there anything more to say about Paris than what we said about Seattle and Gorillas?
I mean, they got to win. They got to win. I don't know how, but they did. And like they have to be ahead of those other teams. They played well. They beat LA Thieves. Well, there's not really much to say. They're still not good. I mean, they were still using theory and scrims. Things are still not going in the right direction. But they somehow managed to win 3 maps versus 1 team in a single match. So props to them.
Yeah. What John said, Katie, honestly, it's they did. I mean, I will give them credit though. Them credit because they're trying to play, you know, spoiler. Obviously, LAT is already in champs, but LAT is a team that is going very hard. They still have a new pickup in John. They want to get. I don't know where they're at points wise right now, but I know that they want to be in the top 6 so they don't automatically start in losers bracket at champs. And they want to be in winners bracket at the stage 5 major. And Paris honestly just messed that up for them. So you have to give them credit for going out there, trying to get the win, getting the win. It sucks for me as a freaking LAT fan because we look so good and then we lose to Paris, who's already out of tournament. Scraps was retired. They were screaming with theory. So don't get me started on them. But yeah, I mean, they're a little better than the rest, than the other two, but that's basically all you can say.
Let's move on to highlight our CDL Power Rankings Biggest Mover, presented by KontrolFreek London Royal Ravens. They get it done over New York. They move up 3 spots. This is the part that's not great. 3 spots to 9th, Pacman. So they're in 9th, but you moved them up. They are our biggest mover.
Hey, they're the best. They're the best bottom team at this point, and I don't think it's close. They played a solid match last week against LA Thieves, and then they beat the Subliners this week. You got to give credit where it's due. And in terms of players playing for pride and their future, they have a couple of the biggest in terms of Afro and Paul X. Like, these guys are trying to prove that they need to remain in the league. And I think they're doing just that. They're putting up a good fight. And for bottom team, they keep plugging away, and they're trying to play that spoiler role that Ian was talking about, and they're doing a pretty good job of it.
I like London. I'll say this, Katie. Let me go on a little segment here. I like London. I like Paul X. I like Afro a lot as 2 young players, and I hope they build around both of them moving forward because I think they both have a lot of potential. And they are doing everything that they possibly can. No offense to Shawnee or Alex. They have just not been at the same level that Afro and Paul X have been. And so I want to see them with really good teammates next year and see how well they can do. But we got to give props to them for not giving up. they're still out there trying to show they deserve to be in the league next year, be on a starting lineup next year. And yeah, I mean, they beat NYSL. They're just being that spoiler team, like John said.
Look, the positive is that they have a solid core if they decide to keep the same style of lineup going forward. Although, I don't even know what style of lineup it means at this point. I know that when they first formed, they were trying to be that European staple. But now that Toronto exists, I would scrap that whole idea. Like, Toronto is clearly the best European team, even though they're not based out of Europe. Just let that go and just form the best possible roster that you can. That's what I mean. And then they have a couple pieces that people would actually go team with and want to build around.
Yeah, definitely a team looking forward. There are pieces there to work with for sure. LA Thieves in pieces, unfortunately, as they had a pretty rough go of it this week, but they did not move. Despite the week, they did not move. You kept them at 8th. Pacman, why is that?
Yeah, but that's a bad thing, right? That's a bad thing for them, not a positive. The bottom 4 are pretty much set as the bottom 4.
Yeah.
They're not qualifying. Even when they win, it's fleeting. But LA Thieves last week, Ian was saying that we could have made an argument for them to move up. I don't think Ian can even come close to making that argument now, right?
Good thing we didn't move them up.
Yeah. So honestly, it's not a good thing. They, in terms of just now, we're talking about the actual standings numbers, which for most of the season we kind of ignored because there's so many games to play. But now all those 10-point losses that you could, like, those matter. You're giving up 10 points to Paris when you're 20 points out of 6th place. All these games matter so much, and it's just a really bad loss and a really bad week for LA Thieves, and they stay 8th, but that's just because right now they're the worst team going into champs. They're the worst looking team, the least consistent team. It's a tough spot, but they can turn it around.
Yeah, I will say the one bright side to this is so far, they didn't look good this last week, right? But so far in stage 5, the only game mode that they have a negative record in is Control, which if you were going to have a negative record in any mode, it would be that. They've been solid at Hardpoint, been solid at S&D, which in my opinion, most important thing, right? Because that's 4 of the 5 maps in a series. So they have something to build off of, even with this horrible loss that should have never happened against Paris. And I think they're not at a point that FaZe is at, Katie, where it's like, oh, sometimes you need to be punched in the face. Okay.
It's a good thing that you lost, realistically. It's like, no, it's a horrible thing that you lost.
But knowing these guys, they can use it for good. Okay. They can use that to be the fire, because now they got to beat OpTic next week. They have to beat OpTic if they want any sort of chance at winner's bracket, which is huge, not only for their mental, okay, not only for their success, but also for their overall seed going into champs, biggest event of the year. So hopefully they turn up, because that was a pathetic loss. And if we could have moved them down, we probably would have.
Yeah, so they didn't move, but it was not a good thing, as you both have said. So what about 6 and 7 sitting right above them? You have New York Subliners in 6th, Rocker in 7th, both of them moving down 1 spot. Ian, why is that?
You know, for Minnesota being where they're at, they only played Empire this week. But I think the biggest thing for me is their series versus Empire. It just showed me what we've kind of thought all year long. They just don't have enough when it comes to the respawns. They just don't. And you're not going to be a consistent team when that's the case. So it's like they're like there. They're like knocking on the door outside the club, you know, talk about, oh, I know all my boys are in there. All my boys are there. and the guy's like, huh? Like, yeah, you're not good enough. Like, you don't got enough sauce to get in. That's Minnesota Rocker. They're a team that can be so good. And they're right there. But then they just don't have that extra little something to get them in the door to really consistently battle these top teams. And then NYSL, they're on a downward trend, but John could probably take it over. You can't move them that far down.
Yeah, it's like we still have to base, even though it's a power rankings, we still have to go off what we've seen for the majority of their time together, and that's why they're 6th. If it was just based off recent times, it'd have to be, you know, 11, 12. So that doesn't make any sense because we know we're better than that. We know that they're better than that. It's just they're in a rough spot, right?
Don exposed himself, NYSL fan. Y'all heard that. He said, you know, we're better than that.
Yeah, I did, but I'm not a fan of anyone except for me and the Dodgers. No, but honestly, it's just in terms of NYSL, we know that they have a higher ceiling than the rest of these teams. So when we move them down, we gotta really be patient with how we do it. It's just a tough go of it. But then out of nowhere, they can turn it around and win the next 3 matches and look like one of the best teams in the game. Because there was a point here, maybe a month ago, a few power rankings ago at least, where you could say, you could make an argument they're the 2nd best team, right? We were talking about that before Dallas had that run. You could technically move them ahead of Toronto. We just didn't do it for obvious reasons, for these reasons, where we've seen consistency from them. And now we're just seeing the opposite from New York, but we have seen that in the past where they were one of those top teams, so we have to put them at 6th. And like you said about Rocker, they're good, but I feel like outside of a couple weeks where, one, they were terrible at a point in the season, but that was short-lived. And then there was one where they were great, but that was also short-lived. They've been the same team the whole time, like he said. Just a really good team, not great, and they're not really surprising you with anything that they do. They're just there. They should beat these bottom teams, compete with the rest. Win or lose, it should be close. But we just don't expect them to be a championship-level team.
All right, we're going to do the final team now before you get into the problem of the bottom 4, which is that the top 4 stay fairly stacked. Well, Florida moving up 2, the only team in this like bottom series of about 8 that actually moved up. London being our biggest mover, and now there's Florida moving up 2 places into 5th. Ian, take it away, Florida Mutineers.
We got to give them some love, Kitty. 3-0 currently in stage 5. They do have an opportunity to get first in this group, and they look good. Neptune has been stepping up tremendously. Honestly, I know it might be a little too late, but Neptune seriously has potential to take over and win Rookie of the Year, depending on how these last 2 majors go. He's looked phenomenal. Now, obviously, that would be a long shot, but I just want to say he was my Rookie of the Year in the beginning of the year. And, of course, he's panning. And, you know, he's panning out. But they went 3-0. They look good. Got a big win over Empire, even though I wish it was a little bit more clean of a win. It was kind of sloppy. And I'm excited to see their next week, their next matches, because that's really going to help us understand where they're at. You know, we felt like they deserved to be moved up. But this next week, we might know if they're the real deal or not. You know, if they can actually contend and potentially win a championship this year.
Yeah, they looked really good this past week, but I also have to remember that they outslayed heavily and that they still had a rough win as far as wins go. But the thing is, they did this to us last stage. They were in first place last stage too, with potential to go off and, you know,
yeah, you're right,
going through winners. And then they ended up not even making winners from the first place spot. They ended up in losers and then ended up flaming out of the tournament. They did not look good. So I always got to keep that in mind when I think about this Florida team, because they have all the potential in the world, but they do not ever show us the consistency. And if they show us that level of consistency, they're scary. We saw it last year. They won back-to-back tournaments. They have it in them. But maybe, just maybe, this is that point where they actually get to the point where they're consistently making the right plays and on the same page, and they don't have to massively outslay these other top teams to win, because that's what's going to take to actually win a tournament on LAN against these guys. You have to be playing correctly and taking advantage of everything that's given to you. So hopefully this is their time.
Now let's talk about the top 3 and the newest entrant into kind of that top 4 separated category above everyone else. OpTic in 4th. You guys didn't move anyone. FaZe 1st, Toronto 2nd, Dallas 3rd, OpTic 4th, all staying static. But Ian, I think now you do kind of tuck OpTic nicely in with that top 4, because, well, they're taking out that number 1 team, which is just separating that section of the league from everyone else. What do you have to say about everyone staying static?
I think it's like you said, you know, now OpTic, they're part of the friend group, you know, and people might say, oh, they beat FaZe. How is OpTic not moving up a little bit? Empire lost to Florida. We have to give respect to the other teams above OpTic, like we have all year long. It's so hard when the rankings are off of 1 week, and it might only be one series that these teams have played. Now, while OpTic did beat FaZe, and they are undefeated, and they are currently first in their group, it was just one match. Now, it was a big match for them. Don't get me wrong, it was a big match. But when you get to the top 4, we got to wait until the major to really make moves, you know, to really see what these teams are about, in my opinion. Professional opinion.
Right. The top four are heavy hitters. These top two, like, they just are who they are. Toronto lost the stage before to Florida, I believe it was 3-2, and then swept everyone else. There's a reason why they're at the top of the rankings. You don't just move them down from one loss. This is just great for OpTic to solidify themselves. OpTic played amazing, and that's what you want. Power rankings aren't that important. All that matters is how you are in the game. Like right now, your confidence is at an all-time high. Like, this is the best OpTic, and their fans should feel. This is the best that they felt all season, other than like the first couple weeks, which is highly irrelevant at this point. And I mean, this is a great spot for OpTic to be in. They can go out and get first in their group and have that first round bye, which is huge, because we all know that consistency has been a problem. They might fall out, and just to have that bump in automatic placing is huge. OpTic looks really good, and good for them.
Yep, OpTic looks good. FaZe, Toronto, Dallas, they all look good, and that's why they're not moving. That top 4, they're staying static in the power rankings. As always, please let us know what you think of the power rankings, any moves that you think are right or wrong, and what you would want to do in the comments. But the power rankings, we'll have to see if anything substantially changes as the next week comes up. But for now, that's how all these teams will fall in our power rankings. We'll see you next time.